Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I am your host, Chris Fraser. Before we get to the fantastic episode you're about to hear, I'd like to take this opportunity to let you know that I'll be hosting the Jam Session presented by the Infidels and sponsored by the Fraser McPherson Jazz Fund at Heroes Welcome on Sunday, October 27th from 2 to 4 p.m. And I invite you to come out, either as a musician or as a listener. I'm thrilled to be hosting the Jam this month, and I'll be joined by Todd Stewart and David Caballero in the house band. The Jam we held already in October on Sunday the 13th was awesome, with a great turnout and friendly, welcoming vibes all around. Jam sessions are extremely important to any local jazz scene, and the number one thing that helps them thrive is people, you. So come out, order some food, bring some friends. There's lots of room at Heroes Welcome. I'll see you there. And without any further ado, here's my wonderful conversation with our good friend, William Chernoff. Enjoy. My guest today is a fellow musician, writer, podcaster, and general man about town. His forthcoming record, Queen's Park, will be hitting the shelves on November 8th. He is the progenitor of the Rhythm Changes content universe, and it's my pleasure to have him here, William Chernoff, or Will Chernoff.
Thank you.
I just asked you if it's Will or William.
And you did both.
And I did both. Now it's both. Will.
Yes.
I'm going to keep doing that. Will Queen's Park be hitting the shelves? Are we going to have a physical release?
No, because it's only a 3-track EP. So
right,
a good fit, and I'm not doing a 7-inch vinyl.
It won't fill up a whole... How many minutes are you supposed to fit onto a CD? Like 72
onto
minutes?
A CD? Oh, it can be a lot. I mean, the two CDs I've done, they would fit on LP, no problem, because they're both between 30 and 35 minutes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But you could go like an hour and a half on a CD if you want. Yeah. Not that I ever want to.
I thought, it obviously depends on the quality of the recording, but I think at full quality, it was supposed to be like the length of like Beethoven's Fifth or something like that.
For an LP or for a CD?
For a CD.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, CD, you could have a really wide range. LP, it's more specific. There's a couple of LP projects that I want to do because I put out a bunch of digital-only EPs. Like this one is maybe my third or fourth.
Yeah.
And in the future, I would love to combine some of them onto vinyl releases where, in particular, I have an EP called 12th Street Quintet, which was my first ever session at 12th Street Sound in New Westminster with Anthony Senarini after I realized that he lived down the block from my former home in New West. Yeah. The first time I went in there was in December 2019. It was just before COVID, and I did a session there. And then earlier in 2019, I also did a 3-track EP with Dave Sekula at Demitone. And I called that at the time Quartet Reunion because it was the first time I got Thad Bailey-Mai, Johnny Tobin, Carson Toro back together since I was 20 years old and recorded my first album or whatever. But I have those two EPs, and I think I could fit them side A, side B. I think they'd fit perfectly. I put one on side A and one on side B. So at some point, you may see me do that on vinyl if I can ever afford it.
Well, if he's not going to say it, then I'll say it. You can help him afford it by subscribing to the $100 subscriber tier on the weekly newsletter at rhythmchanges.ca. Okay, that's all the plugging.
Absolutely,
was uncomfortable.
You filled your quota.
Yeah. That's funny. Actually, you mentioned you've recorded with Anthony Senarini and recorded with Dave Sekula at Demitone because same.
Yes. So which was your Demitone was Give, right? Was that Demitone?
Yeah, that was my trio record.
Yeah, 2016. You put it out.
And then I also made a record. Do you know about this one? Coffee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Chad played on it. Chad Galfin played on it. Yeah.
It was
Jamil,
me, Chad, Jamil, and Trent.
Yeah. I remember Anthony telling me about doing that because I think you did that before Anthony and I became close friends.
Probably.
Because it was before COVID, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was while me and Trent and Yamil were all working at Long McQuaid's together.
Right. And Anthony was,
he was working there too. Yeah, yes. He was working on the sales floor.
That's how he knew them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we all we all just had the idea of like just making a record together. But Yamil, Chad, and Trent had already made a project together. They did like a Christmas album.
Okay, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do and I'm just not thinking of it. Yeah.
It was under a different name. I can't remember.
We'll look it up after. Yeah.
And but then they were like, they wanted me to like play with them in that group, and so we had this idea of like kind of doing standards, but like retooling standards to be a bit more. I mean, some of them having more of a backbeat, and so we have like this 5 or 6 tracks.
I do remember this coming out
record,
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called Coffee. And I was just talking to Trent about that. He just played this very successful show with his video game music band.
Missing No at Tyrant.
At Tyrant, yeah. That was like,
Were you
I
there?
think they sold it out. Yeah, I was there.
You were there? Nice, yeah.
I've been going to Missing No shows for
a decade?
As long as I can remember.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
Not that they've played every single year throughout the decade, but like if you take it all the way back, it's 10 plus years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they've managed to play like one show per year, maybe not during the COVID years, but
pretty much.
But at the very least, they've been able to play one show a year, either at conventions or possibly booking their own event. But usually it's because of like some other video game themed event that they've been able to play. And I've been so many of them are very, very close friends of mine in that band. So I've just been painfully aware of everything that they do for a very long time.
Shout out to Thomas Holden, who is one of the main people who brings you and me together to play.
That's true.
Most of the times that you and I have played together have been with him.
We got to get that
in our little drumless trio.
That's a great band.
Second Floor Gas Town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should play Apollos.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good place for it. No drums, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. We'll talk about Apollos maybe later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so happy for Missing though, because they've been going at it for over 10 years now, at least. I think there's been like an idea, like a kernel of an idea for Missing No. Not to speak on their behalf. Maybe we should just have like Thomas on.
Yeah.
We should just have like Thomas and Michael on the podcast. Like I'm giving you the idea. I'm the host. We should have them on. I should have them on, and then we could just get like a full oral history of Missing No.
I would love that,
because I remember I was telling you about this house I used to live in East Van. It was called the Pender House.
Mm-hmm.
I lived there with Thomas, and John Nicholson and Luis Melgar.
Yeah,
and Jess Toplak, now Jess Hawks. Around that time, I was living in that house in 2012, 2013. So I think it was around that era when the idea of Missing No came to be.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically, I remember just always hearing rough recordings of Missing No, or arranging ideas for Missing No. This is also before John was in the band full time. John was not in Missing No in the beginning. They started out as a 3-horn and rhythm section band. It was a 7-piece band at the beginning. These days, it's a 9-piece band. They've expanded to 5 horns.
Wow!
And actually, Thomas has rearranged a bunch of those original charts that they had from way back when to fit 5 horns, which is funny. It's like they started Missing No. They had a bunch of this repertoire down, and then Thomas went to U of T, got a master's degree, came back and then rearranged all the parts with his master's
right.
degree prowess. But I was gonna say I'm so happy for them because I mean they've been going at it, and I've seen them play, you know, rooms of not many people. We'll say that.
Yeah.
I've even subbed for Eric Wetstein in that band like twice, and I remember playing this one convention with them, and it was totally dead. It was just completely dead. It was at the Peony Forum, and it was just like it was not a great gig. It was like kind of demoralizing to play like this like giant hall and like basically nobody was listening.
It happens.
Of course it happens. It's part of like you have to have that experience.
Is that part of paying your dues?
Yeah.
That's part of paying your dues.
And just to go to Tyrant and see them like sell that room out because like video game music suddenly is having a real explosion.
Yeah.
Because people really like identify with that music, right? It's pretty amazing to see like, you know, they'll mention the name of a composer. And I'm not as into this stuff as a lot of them are. And they'll mention the name of the, you know, Japanese composer of the Final Fantasy games in the 90s, and then people will.
I know who that is. It's Nobuo Uematsu. Yeah, I know that guy's name. Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 2, maybe I can't remember.
Oh, okay, yeah,
definitely Final Fantasy. Yeah,
and obviously the music is awesome. It's like very very cool music. But I'm not as privy to it. But when you say these names to these crowds, they freak out.
They know.
It's crazy. Like imagine that happening in jazz crowds.
Oh, like if you Jerome Kern or
it's like, woo!
Let's go.
Yeah. I wish. Jerome Kern. Wait, what did they play the other day at Apollo's? That was Jerome Kern.
Oh, when you came down and I was there at Apollo's doing my Subscriber Friday piece about it. Yeah.
Nobody else but me.
Yes.
That was it. Sorry. Nerd moment.
Second set.
Nerd moment. Anyway. Okay, so you know the name of that composer.
Yeah.
So is video game music a big thing for you?
Not in the sense that we were just talking about with these folks, but video games are very important to me because I wasn't a musical kid. I was a gamer kid.
Oh.
And I had my whole childhood where I did not care at all about music. I mean, my mom was musical when she was a kid. And, you know, she exposed me to some music. Like we listened to music on the radio in the car, and like she would play guitar and sing out of a Beatles songbook or something but I didn't care about music at all until I started playing in high school. All I cared about was video games, and all my friends were about video games. And then when I went to New Westminster Secondary School, then I made my music friends. But before then, there was nothing. That was a kind of cold start in terms of caring about music. Like I just barely happened to pick up my first couple instruments before I arrived at high school, but I didn't care. Like I was just doing it to try something. I only started caring once I started playing with these people who are still here today, with Madeleine Elkins, with Nebyu Yohannes, with Thad Bailey-Mai, with Miles Wong, with all these people who I've been playing with the whole way. That was when it started. I didn't care at all.
I don't know why, but somehow that's shocking to me.
Somehow it is to me too when I look back on it, but it's totally true. I didn't care one bit. I cared about Super Smash Bros. Melee and StarCraft and all this other stuff.
I guess it's kind of the same for me. Like I only cared about playing basketball for a while until I like realized I was like good at guitar.
Okay, yeah, similar kind of thing. Yeah,
I was like suddenly good at guitar because like my brother played guitar. He's 4 years older than me, and he played guitar before I did, and he was pretty good at guitar too. And he, you know, he'd be playing this stuff, and then I tried to basically copy him, even though I didn't have my own guitar. I like borrowed a guitar from our church and played that for a while just as a means to like try to play guitar because my brother played guitar. And then like suddenly I just kind of got like one day it was just like apparent that I was actually good at guitar.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even realize that it had happened. And then I was like, oh, cool. I'm like actually good at guitar, like as opposed to like being too short to play basketball. Like,
or at least at whatever level you imagined you had to be to play basketball.
I mean, I didn't make the grade 8 team, so I think maybe I was just like, I was lost.
Yeah,
I was lost. I needed something to hold on to. So, yeah, badminton wasn't cutting it intellectually. No. I
was lost too. My elementary school had 50 or 60 students in the whole school.
Yeah.
And then I went to New Westminster Secondary School and there were over 2,000 and I didn't know what the heck to do. So that's why I leaned so hard into the band program, because that was a smaller group of people who I could get to know.
Yeah. I think it's funny because like you have like these interests as like a tween, like video games,
exactly,
or sports or whatever.
Yeah, both. Yeah, for sure.
And I think you do come to realize, like, unless you like particularly excel at those things, like man cannot live on video games alone, right? Like, it's just not. You're not like losing a video game sucks, and so like if you're playing a game that's like too hard, like eventually you'll get bored of losing or whatever, right? Like. And so I think with music, that kind of thing can happen too, where like you get kind of like bored of music, or like you can't figure it out. Like it's not for everybody, right? So
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I just followed my friends, like, because I was in elementary school and I have no siblings, but I kind of had my 4 chosen brothers sort of who I saw all the time. Like when I was growing up, I lived in New Westminster and I had 3 best friends basically, and they lived in Ladner, Tsawwassen, and North Van, and we all went to elementary school together in East Richmond.
Wow! Okay.
Because people were driving in, and the Tsawwassen family, there were 2 brothers, and then there was one kid here, one kid there.
Oh wow!
Basically, and all 4 of us were. Or all 5 of us, me plus them 4, were friends, and we would do this rotation on the weekends where, you know, we would go to the Tsawwassen family's house and we would stay there all weekend, like sleep over and play video games and stuff. And then we would rotate and we do the North Van, and then we would have them, and so that's, but no music, just gaming, just being a gamer kid in the late 2000s, kind of situation. And so that's who my friends were. But then when I started high school, then my friends are these people and they're playing music. So I just want to do what they don't care about video games. They're not doing that at all. So I just left it behind, and I just was like, okay, this is what my friends are doing now. So this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I kind of see, it was sort of similar for me. Like, I feel like there was in high school, I kind of had a period where I had both interests. There was like a group of friends that I had that really liked playing video games, but also really liked music, and they were all older than me. And I hung out with them quite a bit until they all graduated and got jobs and stuff. And then I was, you know, in grade 11 or grade 12 in high school, and then around that point is when I started to actually take music quite seriously, instead of it being like just something I had an interest in, like. With that group of friends, I remember we got the new Red Hot Chili Peppers album and like listened to it in the one friend's car. Like we had like the one friend who could drive, and like we like listened to Stadium Arcadium in his car.
That's the album with like Danny California and Snow and
Snow Hey-O. Yeah, and like 40 other songs. So it was like way too
like
long.
A super long. What we were talking about with CDs, record. Right? Oh, it was literally a double album. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, it's a double record. Because like at that time, like Red Hot Chili Peppers could do no wrong in my eyes.
They were huge.
Yeah. And turns out they can do wrong. Unfortunately, that's another story.
Can't we all?
Yeah. We're coming at you live from Casa Fraser.
Thank you.
We are joined in the room by my spouse Steph, and
that's the 1,000th free weekly email sign up.
That's
Steph
right.
Fraser,
number 1K. Yeah. Identity revealed. Identity revealed. Yeah, Steph. So we went to Apollo's.
This is awesome.
On Thursday, we went to Apollo's. Me and John. We decided we wanted to go to the new one of the newest jazz venues in the city, Apollo's, which is the room that used to be Tangent Cafe.
Yeah.
And Steve Caldesat, Bill Kuhn, and Conrad Good were playing there. So John Nicholson and I decided to go check the show out. And we get in and see Will and Vez there.
Yeah.
Enjoying the music. We sit down next to them. And as I'm watching the show, Will leans over to me and shows me his phone screen, and it just says 999. 999 subscribers. And he says, we just need one more. I'm like, I'm going to text Steph right now.
And you did.
I was like, there's no way Steph is already subscribed.
Yeah. That was perfect. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I text Steph and they're like, done.
I'm on it.
Yeah.
And thus on
I'm
October
logging
10th,
I'm logging in.
we hit it. We hit the milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we at right now? What's the number right now?
Enough that when we send the next free weekly that's coming up after the time of recording, there won't be enough unsubscribes to bring it below 1,000. We're here to stay.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We're over 1,000. We're just getting started, baby.
Absolutely. First 1,000's the hardest.
Yeah, totally.
Do you know how long it took?
I mean, when did we start?
Oh, man.
2019?
So it depends on where you draw the lines, because I think you could either start at the first free weekly email, which was in February 2022. The very first one was I went to go hear this brand new band called the Ostara Project at Jazz at the Bolt. Here's what they played. That was the very first one. Or you could start it at Rhythm Change's absolute founding in July 2020. But there's not really a continuity all the way from there till February 2022. The gig list starts on May 1st, 2022. So there's it's not a year and a half of trying to make that number go up. It's a year and a half of just wandering and writing into the void and trying stuff. But if you take it all the way back to July 2020, and if you like divide it into chunks of 200, like how long did it take from 0 to 200? How long did it take from 200 to 400, etc.?
Yeah.
I looked at that. The first 200, it takes like 2 years because there's all that meandering, and like you don't get to 200 until after the gig list. So 200 was like summer of 2022. And if you trace it all the way back, that's 2 years after I started.
Wow.
Because I started on July 1st, 2020, just writing about whatever I felt like every week on Substack with Rhythm Changes.
Yeah.
I started once I got
contributed to that, right? I wrote about good information back then.
Yeah, you were really early. You were in this period I'm talking about where it's not like not consistent effort from me. You were already contributing in that time. But I started at the very beginning once I got 50 people. Like I just went around asking my friends individually, like if they would be my first free readers or whatever. Yeah. And once I got to 50 people, then I started doing it in the summer of 2020. Right. But the first 200, you could say it takes 2 years. Then 200 to 400, it takes a year and a bit. It's in like the fall of 2023 that you get to 400.
Right.
And then 600, it takes like...
So more than double that in a year.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because the first 200 took 2 years of meandering. Then 200, 400 took about a year. Then it takes about 6 months to get from 400 to 600. Takes about 6 months to get from 600 to 800. Now you're wondering, well, doesn't that take us already this time? Well, 800 to 1,000 took 1 month. 1 month.
Interesting.
Now I don't expect that we're going to get another 1,000 next week. Like we're not the exponential curve's not going to go up forever, but it's growing like a weed. So as long as that's the case, I'm very, very happy.
That's
obviously
awesome, man. That's great. So if you're listening right now and you're not subscribed to the free weekly,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Because I mean, as great as the podcast is, you're probably not going to find out about what shows you can watch in the next couple of days. Like I was able to plug John Corsered's show that's going to be at the end of this week, which will already have happened by the time this podcast comes out.
Yeah, when we're recording this, it's coming up. Yeah, on the following weekend.
Recording, but today's the October
Thanksgiving
14th.
Monday today. Yeah.
Today's October 14th. The John Corsered Absolute Unit show is happening on Friday. He was gung ho, ready to plug that one when we recorded his episode in early September. But like, that's John. I mean, John's very, I guess he's just very good at thinking 2 months in advance.
Yeah.
But you're not going to hear about shows that are coming up in this podcast. I'm sorry to tell you. You've got to go to the free weekly and you've got to go to the gig list to find out about that stuff. So get on there. Go to rhythmchanges.ca.
Totally.
But so where were we though, man? We just started talking about a whole bunch of stuff. This is great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were talking about the growth of the.
I was talking about how
changes.
long it took. Before that, we were talking about
Yeah.
like video games and getting out of it and getting into
Totally,
music. Yeah.
I mean, are video games still a big part of your life though?
No.
Same.
No, sports is. You know, I've been
know
interested
you're
in
a sports
the whole
fan.
time.
I know you're a
Yeah,
sports
but
fan.
video games, no. And playing, I'm not playing like you play and like a lot of our friends do. You know, I pop up and
You
I play
play.
once in a while.
You play,
But I do not play at the frequency and at the level that most of the people that we talk to do, for sure.
so?
But I still do. I have been doing it, at least several times a year. I pop
played
up and do it. So
Frankie's.
it doesn't leave. Yeah, I played Frankie's this month. Yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't leave my life, but it's just like it's a smaller chunk.
And you played
know, in
upright
terms of-
bass.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
How come I didn't know that show was happening? Like, I feel like it came and I didn't even realize it was going to happen.
I probably announced it when you were in Montreal or something. Like, there's a lot going on all the time.
Man,
Yeah,
I wish
no
I
worries.
went to that. You were playing upright bass and everything.
Yeah.
How did that show go?
It was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was
your
fun.
Queen's Park group?
No, it was the
Okay.
Aim to Stay group. It was
Okay.
the first album, and believe it or not, it was the first time that the not the full original lineup of my first album, but
Mhm.
it was the first time that I got Thad Bailey-Mai and Johnny Tobin on a stage with me to play that music.
Cool.
It was the first time ever because we recorded Aim to Stay in 2015 and 2016. And so at the time, it was split up over those 2 recording sessions.
Mhm.
And on the first recording session, I played upright. It's the
Mhm.
only time I played upright on my own recorded music so far. But on that first session, I played upright, and Bobby Weens was on drums, who was from
Bobby
Calgary, come to
Weens.
Vancouver, lives in Denver now.
Yeah.
He's got a kid.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah. He comes to Vancouver every so
I have
often.
a funny
to play
Bobby
Frankie's.
Weens story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go?
Actually. No.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. Yeah. So I couldn't get him, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
I got Thad and Johnny, and I got Todd because Carson Toro was also out of town, right, at
Okay,
this
yes,
time. So
that's
I got
right, that's right.
Todd. Yeah. So
Great.
I played with Thad and Johnny and Todd, and we played the music of my first album, Aim to Stay,
Sweet.
and then some other stuff. Yeah.
Sweet. And that was a good show though. You had fun.
Yeah. Definitely home crowd. Lots of people who came out to support me, which was really, really nice, and we had a good time. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I've played with you on the upright bass a good amount. Just
Yeah,
because
with Thomas Holden.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that.
I think you sound great on the upright, man.
Thanks.
It's great to see you playing it more often these days. Yeah, that's great. And you got Johnny on the upright bass of keyboards
On the Frankie's piano.
on
Yeah.
Frankie's piano.
Yeah, we did our duo tune. There's a track on the album where we
Oh,
played
cool.
duo at the end of the day in Monarch after the end of the session. We
Yeah.
snuck in one more take of a duo tune. We played that tune sitting
Yeah.
to her left. We got to play that together as a duo at Frankie's. So that was really sweet.
Yeah, I was in Nightcap with Johnny.
Yes, you were.
And so I only know him. I only know his playing. Well, not that I only know. I've obviously heard his music since then. But my experience playing with him is just him on the piano.
Yeah.
And
As opposed to all his electronic stuff
Yeah,
and what he's known
yeah.
for nowadays. Yeah. Okay, I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
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 So it must have been nice to have him on the piano.
Yeah, it was a good flashback. He's one of
Yeah.
my original friends too, for sure.
Yeah.
Like in terms of those people who I started playing with. I met him pretty early, and he's always kind of been there as I've been learning my thing.
Did you
And
meet him at Cap or before Cap?
I met him before.
Okay.
So really, my first friend in music is Madeleine Elkins, and like all my first
Right.
100 gigs, we probably all of them were together.
Yeah.
Like either as a duo or with other people.
That's awesome.
So that's its own thing.
yeah.
And then the other person who I didn't play 100 gigs with as a teenager, but who deserves all the credit for introducing me to people is Julian Jaime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Julian I met before Cap. He lived in East Richmond and I lived in
Yes.
New West. It was pretty close by. He always had people over to jam at his house.
Yeah. I've been to his house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His parents' place in Richmond at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And through those jams, I met Quincy Mays, Thad Bailey-Mai, Miles Wong, Stephen Edwards, all these people. Johnny, I didn't meet through that. I actually ended up playing a random gig with him.
Okay, cool.
Around the same time.
Yeah.
But Julian introduced me to all those people who like I ended up meeting when I arrived at CAP. And Nebyu Yohannes was at high school with us as well. And so he and Madeleine and I were playing in our group together. And then he went to Humber after he went to CAP. And so he comes back here, and now he's on this Queen's Park EP with my quintet, right? So I get to play with Nebyu again.
Awesome.
Which is really special. But there's so many people who have been around and I've known. It's now over half a lifetime, right? Because here I am about 30. I'm going to turn 30 years old next. And so these people I've been playing with since I was about 15. So it's really cool that they're still here. And that I mean, that's
pretty amazing. Like, considering like all those people who you sort of like came up with musically, they're all like pretty active in the scene still.
Yeah. Like, and you didn't think some of them, I thought, different times it's very likely that they'd move away or that they'd go off to do that. But they're here for now. So I don't take it for granted. I love that I can play with them. That Queen's Park EP band for this upcoming EP is Thad and Nebyu and Madeleine and Miles. And so these are all those people who I've not been playing with as a unit continuously, but who my first getting to know them happened all the way back then, and I've known them ever since. Yeah.
So you know Miles from way back then? How do you know Miles?
I met him at Julian's circle.
Oh, I see. I see.
Definitely like him and Stephen Edwards on the bass. Cool. They were playing together a lot even back then.
Yeah.
And so Miles was one of those drummers who I got to know through kind of Julian's social circle.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I was wondering how like, because I seem to remember like you and Maddie and like Nebyu all having a relationship with Miles, but I know that Miles is from Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like he's a Vancouver boy through and through.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, but he's not from New Westminster. Like, how is it? So now that makes sense. So like Julian was sort of the node.
Absolutely. He's the social butterfly. Because I was very, very shy.
Yeah.
And I was not equipped to. That's basically why it didn't work out for me at CAF even too, just because I wasn't like socially prepared to be able to handle meeting all these people and that sort of thing. But, Julian was so huge for me in that way because he was so friendly. He was so in touch with all the other people who wanted to play jazz in Vancouver at all the different high schools. And he brought us together. That's what it felt like for me, at least, being his friend and being able to meet people through him. Yeah. So he's so important to me back then. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah. I had no idea. That's so cool. Shout out to Julian then.
Absolutely. And then the people I actually met at CAF were people like yourself and like Parker Woods.
Yeah.
And, a whole bunch of other people from then on. But yeah, a lot of people I knew coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's so cool to have had that kind of sort of micro community of like-minded, and it's totally like self-propelling kind of thing. Like, because I know a lot of people when they're in that phase of like pre-university, but like knowing that like music is their thing and like needing somewhere to play it, like high school jazz band isn't enough. Like, like they need like something more. They need more like, I feel like that always happens. Like they're always like musicians who end up going to music school. They always need to find something else, another outlet that isn't just like part of their school, unless the school has like a really good program or something.
I didn't want to go though.
What?
I didn't want to go to music university. Okay. I made a concession basically to try it out.
Okay.
And I bailed on what I thought I wanted to do. I didn't give any thought to what I wanted to do until I had to.
Yeah.
And then what I thought I wanted to do was, I just looked at the conditions and I was like, well, I would love to get a free ride somewhere.
Yeah.
At the time is what I was thinking. And,
okay.
And I also thought I don't want to be here. I want to escape and try something new where I don't know anybody kind of thing. What I wanted to do was go to Royal Military College Canada, Kingston, Ontario, and do that program, which is fully funded. And then you do service in the role as an officer that you have trained in when you're there. And so I was like, physically preparing for, like, I was working out in anticipation of like, I'm
Whoa.
going to do basic training at that point, and I was going to go do that.
Crazy.
And that was my plan when I was getting ready to go do something else after high school. And a lot of people tried to talk me out of it and get me to go at least try to go to CAP because it was local, right? I knew I didn't want to go to some other music school and go to McGill or whatever. Like, I had friends who were going to go to McGill, but I didn't want to follow them to McGill. But people at CAP were like, follow me to CAP, you know, kind of thing. Or like my band teachers were telling me like, go to CAP.
I can't imagine Madeleine Elkins being like, yeah, you should join the army. Yeah, that's cool. I'm totally cool with you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should totally be in the army instead of playing bass.
But the unfortunate thing is like, I unfortunately, I get some enjoyment out of like being a contrarian or being a dick in that way. Like if everybody's telling me to do something, I would love nothing more than to do the exact opposite and like stick it to them. And so it got worse when those people were telling me that I should go to CAP. It just made me want to do the opposite even more.
I see.
But I ended up having so much fun in those last 4 months of high school. You know, I was playing gigs that our band teachers would find for us out in the community in New West. I was playing at what is now the Surrey Schools Jazz Festival, you know, and we had so much fun doing that. I was playing, you know, I was writing tunes. Like some of my tunes date back to those days.
Cool.
And I was finally like growing into my first friendships there. And like I was hanging out with Julian. I was going to his place. And I ended up having so much fun that I was just like, screw it. Okay, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I had enough scholarships that, you know, as I often say on this show of the first 100 episodes, I did only enroll for like 12 months for 1 year at CAP. But I had it paid for the most part.
Yep.
Can't really remember, but I had some scholarships to go there. So I got to go try it out.
Yep.
And then I was like, well, I don't want to, I know I don't want to be a teacher. So I know I'm not going to stay here.
Yep.
I want to go off and do my own thing. And so then I did.
Wow. I would never have guessed that you were thinking of joining the army.
Yeah, I would be getting out like now. Like the commitment to service after graduation would have taken me about now, like age 30 or 31 if I did it.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy? I've been married for almost 6 years. So it'd be a different life if I'm coming out and I'm like single, 30 or 31 years old.
You would probably be a very different
life.
Person.
Different
You'd
life.
probably be an extremely different person.
Yeah. And you'll never know what that would be like. But I'm pretty happy with what I ended up doing. So it's all
maybe
good.
Part of you would have wanted to start a podcast though. So like maybe, can you imagine that version?
Yeah, but what would have been about?
I don't know.
I don't think any of us want to know.
Man, that is. I would not have guessed that part of your story.
But when I was making that decision, you know, I was 16, 17 years old. It's like you can be into a lot of random stuff at that point. It doesn't matter. You're not even an adult yet. You don't know what you're going to end up doing. So somehow I got that idea. But I if you look at it now, it's like I did actually end up dispensing with it pretty quick.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to do it. And then I kind of came back and actually looked at what I was up to and who I was spending time with. It's like, okay.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But that's still such an amazing angle. I guess that is like really like, you know, that's a real thing. I mean, people do it and people do consider it, and like
I was ready. Like I filled out the application and everything.
In Canada, your age at that time, who did decide to do that and did it. So
I had an application in.
Wow.
I had completed the application. I withdrew my application when I decided I wanted to go to CAP. I just showed up at CAP and I didn't prepare at all. Madeline and I drove up there and we did our auditions one after another. I just decide to go up there, do my audition, and then I just knew I wanted to do
it. You prepared. You said you played 100 gigs.
Oh, I was still playing my first 100 at that point. You know, that kept going into, I didn't start playing out in the community until, you know, maybe after I dropped out. But I had played some, for sure, but only a little bit at that point. But I hardly still going.
Had any of that kind of experience when I started at CAP.
I mean, you did the episode with Madeleine, so you know that we were doing the busking and stuff.
That's right.
That was still to come. Like we were still doing that for another year, like while we were in first year together. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was still to come. Yeah. We only popped up at like the couple of community events that like our band teachers would be able to find for us and put us in for when we were still high school students.
Now, are you a year younger than Maddie?
My birth year is a year after. I'm only a couple months younger if you actually look at the calendar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I'm turning 30 in January coming up now
I see,
in 2025.
Yeah. I see. Okay. Yeah, because I always had this idea that you were like a year younger or something, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of am. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a year younger than my school peers all the way through.
Right, but you just like started.
I guess I
early
started
for
that
your
way.
age?
Yeah, I started that way
Yeah.
and I ended up that way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because I did go to an independent school
Mhm.
for elementary school in East Richmond. That's
okay.
why all my friends were driving in like
Yeah.
that, because it was like a very small school that was serving certain needs,
Yeah.
right, for people. But I started there. Sometimes people ended up at that school after it didn't work out and,
Yeah.
their first option, public school or whatever. But
Hmm.
I think it was pretty obvious for me that it wasn't going to work out for me from the get-go. And so I was very fortunate that I got to start there and that my parents were able to make that decision. And my parents split up shortly thereafter too. But while my
Okay.
parents were still together, they put me there and it was probably the right move. So
Okay. Wow.
I ended up, you have an individual education plan when you're at that school.
I
So I
see.
kind of had a weird journey through my elementary school years. But then I ended up, I was still a year younger than my classroom peers. So I started high school that way too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. And well, I mean, did you end up with sort of this reputation of being like skipping a year?
Like in high school?
Yeah.
I just didn't tell people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's smart.
I wouldn't tell. I was probably, some people say I still am or whatever. I'm just like, I'm a pretty guarded person, unfortunately. I've been trying to learn how to not be that so much, but I think especially back in the day, like it would take me a long time to get to know somebody,
Yeah.
and I would be really closed off, like to anybody who I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy you're a guest on the podcast this time because being a podcast host is a really sneaky way of guarding yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you just get everyone else to talk about
You want them to
themselves.
talk. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's a great way to not talk about yourself.
Hey,
and
yeah.
make it your job.
I think I totally did. I think that would have appealed to me for sure when I was thinking about it. If I was trying to find a way to get to know a bunch of people and meet them and have nice conversations with them, but still kind of maintain that, this would be a good outlet for that. So I'm sure that's part of why it appealed to me from the jump. And once I started doing it, I had lots of fun with it.
I kind of want to start
going.
up at the beginning. I want to talk about the beginning of it because
you
talked to me about starting Rhythm Changes.
Really? I don't remember this off the top of my head.
I remember you asking me about starting like a website for the scene. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Well,
this.
it's definitely, it was after COVID. So there was a time where we could talk about, there was a gap to fill, right? At some point. And it was obvious to a lot of people that there was a gap to fill. That's how the gig list started.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I'm trying to pin down when this would have been or what I would have said. I totally believe you that it was a conversation we could have had.
Vancouver Jazz Forum.
Yep. Had been long gone by then, pretty much. Yeah.
That was important to me, at least, that Jazz Forum, like the gig list that was on there.
Yeah. And New had done that all the way right up to COVID. He kept doing it.
That's right. Yeah.
So really the gap was pretty fresh in that kind of first year of Rhythm Changes. There was no gig list yet, but like it was obvious that there was a gap. There wasn't anything happening because all the venues were closed.
So what was your sort of thinking initially when you had the idea of like getting this? I know it was probably like a lot more, or definitely a lot less focused than it is now, right?
Yeah.
It was sort of, I seem to remember the idea was it being more or less a blog about the scene, about people who were making stuff. Because I remember I had this idea of having a similar website where, because I always felt that like people didn't have press coverage. So like I always thought that it would be nice for people to have people in the scene to have access to some sort of like publication that they could use for just for press, I guess like press bites that they could put into their
applications.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that, and you inspired me by your doing of that. I remember when you did it and when you reviewed a couple of things, and I totally would have reached out to you at some point on Rhythm Changes because you were one of the people who I had seen do this before, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I tried to do it, and then I didn't have the same. I mean, I didn't have the same level of drive that you clearly do to like keep going. And And so I'm glad that you are the one who ended up sort of like continuing that idea and sort of like turning it into this, because like, I mean, this is kind of like what I would have loved to be able to do with that, like have a list that effectively replace the Vancouver Jazz Forum list, and have reviews for people. Like, I'm sure people are using those reviews.
Yeah, I mean, New to Dune was involved in the founding of the gig list too, so there is a direct link.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, no, there are 3 people who deserve all the credit for the founding of the gig list, and they presented the idea to me in its entirety, and I basically just had to say yes and do it. It was Tim Reinert, Rory Hislop, and New to Dune. They came to me. Tim had put out the word, or put out the call, I guess. He was basically like, okay, it's the spring of 2022. We were ramping up again into there being a lot of things going on after 2 years of not. We need something like this to happen again. And he didn't mention New by name, I don't think, but it's obvious. And, New commented there, and they started talking about too. It's like, we need somebody to do this. New, are you going to do it again? No. We need somebody else to do this. Yeah. And at that point, I had actually launched the free weekly in its current form, just a month or two prior, like late February. Yeah. And I had launched subscriptions. I had already had my day one subscribers, and like I'd started doing subscriber only writing as well. Yeah. And so these 3 people were people I was talking to and sending to at this point. They were aware of rhythm changes. Still there's no gig list, but they were aware of rhythm changes because I had just launched these things, and I had my less than 100 people, very first people. And so Rory reached out to me and was like, hey, Tim put out the call to do this thing. New used to do this thing. Yeah. You and I both know that New used to do this thing because we used to consume it. Tim and I were thinking that you could do it at Rhythm Changes. Do you want to do it? Yeah. And I said, yeah. And so then I started doing it.
Awesome. And did you, I mean, I know you realized how important that list was when New was doing it. I mean, has it occurred to you that on top of it being like a public service for people, it is also acting as like a important document?
Yeah, because I have the archive, right? The webpage is refreshed every month. There's a fresh coat of paint and there's a new month on there, but I have a 2.5 year archive. And the old half of that archive is pretty messy. Like I only shaped up what I'm doing kind of in the last year or two, right? But I have a really good 1 year archive. Yeah. And I have a pretty good 2 year archive and counting of all the gigs in our scene. And that's really cool.
Cool.
Yeah. And I don't even know what I can do with that later. There's a whole other nerdy conversation to be had about that. I'm not there yet. I don't have the resources yet to do that. If I have 2 times the subscribers as I have right now, maybe I would. But.
Yeah. I do sometimes think about like some sort of like data visualization of gigs and like like who played who had the highest number of appearances on the gig list or something. Or maybe you could already like figure that out.
I feel like we all know it's Dean Thiessen. We don't need to look.
Dean Thiessen, maybe Conrad Good.
Yeah, Winston Winkler. I actually said when I did my episode with him, I kind of said that I felt like it was him.
It might be Winston.
Yeah, he's had some runs where he's on. David Caballero's the new person who's doing that right now. No, we know who they are, the people who show up the most often, right?
Totally, yeah. Or like weird combinations, like one-off combinations of people playing.
Oh yeah, like the only time these people have ever played together.
Yeah.
Well, the greatest thing for me personally was in the back half of the podcast, in that since the gig list started, that was like all the prep I needed to do for any given guest. I just Control F through the archive and search for all the gigs that they played, copied and pasted them. And that was like if you have notes in front of you when you're hosting an episode, that's what I had in front of me. I just had like dates from the gig list archive, right? So then I could just ask them. Like I think John Nicholson's episode is a great example of that. That entire episode is just me running down a list of gigs that he did and just asking him about them. Yeah. Because he played so many at like around the Jazz Fest time. I was just like, how is this one? How is this one? How is this one? Yeah. And we had a whole hour. We just talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, if we're talking about this year, like, John's definitely in the...
Oh, gosh, he's played so much.
Yeah.
And I get a sense of what are, like, I want to try this. I haven't done this at the end of a year yet, but I want to try this at the end of this year and just look back and be like, what are the gigs that I believe I'll really remember and I already know
Yeah.
what a bunch of them are, and you played on some of them.
Oh.
And so I'll be kind of, and I've written about most of them, and if I haven't, it'll be on my mind that I missed it, sort of.
Right, yeah.
So I'm kind of going to scan through that and be like, what are the ones that I'll really remember from this year, or that we'll really remember from this year? Just gigs, like not Jazz Fest stuff or anything like that, but just year round stuff. What are the things that we'll remember? So I haven't really tried to do that either, but that's a fun thing that I want to hit at the end of this year.
Yeah, there are, I just feel like there are like some, it's just, I just think that archiving the scene is such an important job.
But you asked me about like drive, right? Or you mentioned it. You're like, oh, you seem like you have a lot of drive. I know what the drive is very obvious to me.
Yeah.
And it's still the same as when I started, even though it looks completely different. The drive was, and I do say this every so often, I guess, and I've kind of honed, how I've learned to express this feeling or whatever. But it's just like, I just wanted to participate again.
Yeah.
And participate again in the sense of, so I dropped out of CAP. It's the beginning of 2014.
Yeah.
I just turning 19 years old.
Yeah.
I have all the freedom in the world to try and just go out and play.
Yeah.
And I tried that for about a year-ish, and I started drinking a lot. And like I got into a not great place, and I really wanted to just check out of everything. And I kind of fell out of the scene in like, I would say the summer of 15. Like I went on my solo trip to Europe in the end of 2015 into the fall.
Yeah.
And I stayed in Denmark. I rented a place there, and I kind of played a little bit there, hung out a little bit there, did nothing for a little bit there, for 3 months. That was like, it's my only solo trip in retrospect. 'Cause like I met Vez after I came back.
Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was kind of like in the new west of Copenhagen, or like the Coquitlam of Copenhagen.
Right, yeah.
And then when I came back from that, I didn't really come back to the scene so much. Like I had recorded that session of Aim to Stay with Thad and Johnny and Bobby Weens before I left.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left. And then when I came back, I started to get drawn into this kind of folk rock band that I ended up starting with my friends.
Yeah.
Gabrielle Dubroy, Jay Knutson, and Ben Kelly, called Early Spirit.
Yeah.
Was the name of the band. And I met Vez. And we started dating, and we moved in together. Vez encouraged me to have another recording session. That ended up being the second half of Aim to Stay, right? So I did with Carson and Thad and Johnny, and then in 2016. Right. So then I finished recording my first album. Don't put it out until 2020, but it was in the can.
Is Aim to Stay a poignant title?
It is in retrospect, I guess. Yeah. I'll get back to that in a second, but I started this band kind of 2016, 17, and that ended up becoming my main thing. Like the band was like my main source of income for like 2018, 19, like up till COVID. I was focused on this band. We were playing at all the Canadian folk festivals.
Yeah, you did a lot of festivals.
But I wasn't in the jazz scene.
Yeah, you were.
I was like, maybe I was still in touch a little bit with like Madeleine and Carson, and that was it. Like I was gone for. I often didn't have social media throughout this time period. Like I was very sporadic and so I wasn't very connected. I felt like it was gone. And I felt like I couldn't come back. I was very nervous about it. I felt really bad about it. Like I felt like the way I was behaving in that kind of last year that I was there wasn't good. And I had some experiences that were really tough.
Right.
And that was my residual memory of being in the scene. And so I actually kind of was afraid of it, and I wanted to keep it at arm's length.
You felt ashamed.
I did. And so I didn't want to come back.
Yeah.
But then when COVID happened, COVID stopped the band in its tracks.
Yep.
Right. As of course it would.
Yep.
And I decided I wanted to try and participate again.
Right.
And I was like, well, how am I going to do this? I haven't played jazz in 4 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be coming in and trying to play like all 2 of the 2 gigs that are happening per month in this COVID time. I'm not going to be doing that. I don't have access or connections at this point. I'm just going to try and participate again by writing and stuff and messing around on the internet while I'm at home. And so I started doing rhythm changes just because I wanted to weigh in again. Like I felt like I was ready to come back after that shame or whatever. I was kind of just barely growing out of it. I was 25. I was a little bit older. I could handle it a little bit better. Yeah. And that's the only motivation I need at all of rhythm changes ever since. Like just year on year, that's all I care about. I just want it to be my way to participate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're definitely an important part of the scene now, and I mean, you are playing. I feel like every time you
I have still managed to play. Yeah.
manage to play. Every time you talk about playing bass, you're sort of like you're couching it in some kind of
Yeah.
you're trying to invalidate the fact that you're a musician.
Yeah.
But not to psychoanalyze you, but it's funny how frequently you do this. You're a musician, you're playing bass now. You're in the scene now. People know you as a bass player. You hosted your own show at Frankie's now, so you're in it. You're in it as much as I am. So
see, I mean, I'll take it, right? Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna fight you on this. There's no point. But you're correct. There's something about I'm still processing certain things that I feel about that, and it's been like
I'm not trying to call you out, but I am.
But you are. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I need it. I need it.
Yeah.
We're talking in October 2024.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, there were some tough experiences I had. Those are like 10 years ago to the day or to the month now.
Oh, wow.
Like those things that I remember that really kind of left a mark on me and that I tried to hide from, they happened in October and November of 14 when I was 19 years old.
So, like a performance?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it led to Aim to Stay because you were like, oh, the title.
Yeah.
So the title is actually mundane. That's the thing. A lot of my titles, either I'm just referencing a place or something that was on my mind, or it's like an onomatopoeic phrase or whatever. Like you write the melody instrumentally, you don't have lyrics. And then I think David and Carson, if they didn't say this, they probably do this too or whatever. But if you like sing a line or something from this instrumental melody that you wrote, you're just trying to like think of words that fit the line or whatever.
Just sort of like a lyric.
There's like an Aim to Stay moment in there. Or whatever. It was like that was the words that came to mind. So it's totally mundane, but it can be interpreted that way, which is cool. That's kind of what I'm looking for, right?
So like you like just after I guess like hearing the roughs a million times, you just start to I guess you name it first.
I had named the tune already because I had to bring it in on the lead sheet, for the people. Right. So it was after I written the tune,
Yeah. So I guess the process is a little bit different than with Carson and David because they're kind of like
they're producing it,
and composing at the same time.
Yes, which if you're just writing jazz tunes in this kind of more traditional way, you're not. Yeah, it's done, and then you bring it to the people.
To have it ready.
Yeah. Or you intentionally don't. Like you can bring a sketch of something,
of course,
which I wasn't cut out to do at 20 years old.
Yeah, because and then I guess that could also affect the title too, right? Like
but I'll tell you about writing the music. So. These experiences led to me writing music. In October 2014, I was called to do a gig.
Yeah.
And it went very badly for me.
Okay.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
It wasn't really my fault that it went badly, but I was predisposed to take it really badly as well.
Yeah.
So the reason why it ended up impacting me a lot was internal.
Yeah.
It was because of how I was already predisposed to feel about it.
Right.
But the way that it went down wasn't cool as well.
Yeah.
For sure. And then unrelated to that gig experience that I had, at the end of November 2014, and I told this on the stage at Frankie's earlier this month when I talk about these tunes, Bill Frisell came to Cap with his trio and played a concert with Brad Turner. Now, these are my two favorite musicians in the world at the time.
Yeah.
Brad is my biggest local inspiration as a composer and who I was listening to and whose music I love so much. And then Frisell's music I love so much and I always wanted to play. And
Bill Frisell's always
drawn so much from.
So amazing to see live.
So this was like the concert for me.
Yeah.
And
I remember that concert too.
Because you were, and that's the thing, is you were a good tuition paying student at Capilano University. And so you were there. It was for you. This was a Capilano U production.
Whatever.
I was not.
That was, I think that was the year after I had graduated.
Oh, you graduated. Okay. Yeah. But I was not, I had dropped out of Cap a year ago.
Right.
But believe me, I was going to be there.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I had a back door into being there. The statute of limitations is well gone on this, and I'm sure I've mentioned it on other episodes, but even after I had dropped out, there were a number of friends, some of whom we may have already said their names on this episode, would say, hey, I'm in 4th year combo. We don't have any bass players in our year. Do you want to come? I'll buy you beer at Seymour's Pub. I'll pay you a little bit of cash. U passes for transit use are on paper right now, so I got a friend who never uses it, who drives from Langley. He's willing to give you his U pass to sweeten the deal.
Forgot about the U-Pass.
Statute of limitations.
Oh my God,
so I did that for actually several semesters.
Cool.
Because I had nothing better to do, and I was just 19 or 20 years old. And I was trying to play full time, so I would show up at Cap and be a ringer in these guys' combos, even though I wasn't a student anymore. And as a result of being in one of those combos, I got to play Bill Frisell's music for Bill Frisell in the masterclass in November, and I got to go to that concert.
That's sweet.
Immediately after doing that. So I remember the tunes that we played for him. I also had a really awkward, bad social experience in that masterclass as well, which left an impact on me. Again, mostly just because of how I was going to feel about it more than anything anybody else did. But, you know, I had this terrible gig experience in October. Then I had this terrible experience in the masterclass with like both my musical heroes there. Then I go to the concert. And, you know, I'm ready to like cry my eyes out all concert long, right? I'm just in that, I'm in that feelings. And after, I think in the 24 to 48 hours after that concert, I wrote all the music of Aim to Stay.
Whoa.
And then I started recording it the next summer when I booked that session.
So it was that like, so you were just like in a
just in my feelings,
highly emotional state. And then you're also inspired by this performance.
Yes.
And it's just like this explosion of creativity that happens afterwards.
Yeah. I had already written a couple of tunes, not a lot, some of which I still play. But I wrote all that music and more like the week after.
But it just creates this motivation to sort of like maybe finish a bunch of stuff you've been putting off, and then and then in that process also getting ideas to start new ideas, and
it was all there.
That's interesting how it turned out that way, because it could, I feel like that could also be a recipe for not disaster, but a recipe for becoming maybe more reclusive again.
Could have put you into a slump.
Yeah,
it didn't really put me into a slump. Yeah, that's true. I did still have that unfortunate thing of, I feel like I need to get out of here and stuff, and I still ended up doing that. But yeah, at the time I was musically inspired, and like I booked a recording session at Monarch with my own cash at 20 years old. I was motivated to that extent. So I was interested in it.
Self-funding.
That's what I've pretty much always done. I did Factor Artist Development. It used to be a $2,000 award. I did it 2 times, and that contributed to my second album. Kind of subsidized it. I was going to do it anyways, but it subsidized my second album, maybe eventually, which was my album with Anthony, recorded at 12th Street with Francis Henson on guitar, Carson returning on drums. You know, we recorded that in 2020 and 2021. And then I put that out in 22. That was kind of my grand experience. But like Early Spirit, the folk band, no grants. And no grants, no problem. Rhythm changes, same. No grants, no problem.
No grants.
That's the way I like it. So I'm very happy about that. People say, this is a sidetrack, but people say all kinds of strange things to me back when I was starting the gig list. I remember I got an email from somebody because I was like, should I include Vancouver Island? In the gig list, not as a sidecar, but like on the list, should I have those events in there too? I was reaching out to some people to see if they thought that was a good idea. And somebody on Vancouver Island wrote back to me and was like, how are you funding this? Like, did you apply for a grant, or like what's the model here for this? I'm like, I'm just like doing this just because I want to do it, and like it's part of. I'm not gonna launch it. If somebody says that to me, I'm not gonna like bonk them on the head with my whole spiel of like, well, actually, I mean, if people say it's a public service, I'm stoked for that. But actually, I do have a business motivation to do it because I have paying subscribers and I have sponsorships. I'm not gonna launch into that whole tirade. But I was just like, man, do you really think that like do you need to ask permission from these funding bodies before you go and try something like this? Like, no, you just try it because you want to.
Somebody like that's the thing. Like at a certain point, like somebody's going to do it. because it is such a needed thing in the scene, and it is so important. Like there's this moment, I can't remember which Jazz at the Bolt it was. I think it was Jazz at the Bolt last year, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I remember just this this conversation. I was chatting with Chris Wong.
Mm-hmm.
As you do.
Was his book out?
Not yet. No.
Okay, so yeah, it was 2023.
Yeah, he was still he was still, pre-published. I mean, he's been working on that book for like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
And he's I mean, I'm sure we could talk about the importance of like documentation and archiving the scene. And I'm talking with Chris, we're Jazz at the Bolt, and New walks up and hands him this CD. It's a CD in a just in a regular, like one of those clear paper CD cases. And it's just a burned CD that says, I think it says like Charles Mingus CBC Live or something like that.
Oh.
And he's like, yeah, so here it is. Like, and I guess they had already this was
like
arranged.
a drop.
Yeah. He was like dropping this bootleg. And I think it literally was like somebody had posted this video that they had uploaded, which was a like VCR recording of this live at CBC Studios Charles Mingus Quintet something recording. So it was like a TV event, and it was on TV, and they had recorded it on their VCR or whatever, and then they digitized that and then put it on and uploaded it to some drive folder or whatever, and then New got his hands on it, and then he burned it onto a CD, and then he brought that to Chris. And he's like, so here it is. Here's the CD. And they're sort of nerding out over it. And I ask about it. I'm like, so wait, what is it? This is like a recording of Charles Mingus at CBC Studios? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be somehow archived like through CBC? I would think so. And they both, like, in unison, they're both like, no, CBC is awful about that kind of thing. Like, like, and I don't know what the details are, but like maybe they've like just wiped a bunch of this stuff, which is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to know that what could have been like, and to imagine that, like, because there was a time where it was just sort of normal for there to be like this heavy jazz recording at CBC Studios that was just on TV.
Yeah.
And now like you just have to hope against hope that somebody recorded it on their VCR and then digitized it and then uploaded it.
Yeah.
Instead of that being something that's available through like the government funded broadcasting service. Like that's very frustrating. And so like when I just remember seeing that and thinking, wow, so I really guess we have to do this ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, and I just remember, and I would remember back to like some of the really impactful gigs that I had been to in my life, and thinking like, wow, what if this was only a word of mouth thing?
And so many of them still are.
Yeah.
Places that we remember, I want to get back to them. Like I would have, you mentioned Jess earlier, right?
Yeah.
I've wanted to have Jess on this show for like the whole 3 years. At some point we're going to talk about that space on Hastings at Nanaimo, right? But it has gone by different names. We knew it as El Barrio and Excite. I wanted to do an episode or talk about that for years, and I haven't got around to it. And there's so many. We've never done like what was 1067. We've never even done what was O'Doul's. There's so many of those that we gotta get to.
Totally, yeah. Well, 1067. That's definitely one that I remember going to. That was a huge. Important part of
and see, I don't remember it because I wasn't old enough. Like I just missed it, so I want to know about it, right? So
I remember I mean, it only lasted a couple, maybe a year or two after I was going like really regularly to check stuff out. I think they just got evicted or something from that space. But yeah, like so many of those are just purely word of mouth. There's like no pictures, there's no video. I mean, we're talking about like 2011,
early 2010s, yeah, because the VancouverJazz.com, the Web 1.0 version of things was not firing on all cylinders anymore. And then the social media record is so spotty, you can't trust it to be a good archive.
Exactly,
so.
Yeah. I remember turning 20 there.
Oh, yeah.
I remember being there on October 8th and then staying until 2 a.m. on October 9th. And that was my birthday and I had turned 20. And just, like watching probably just like Chad Makela, Tommy Babin, and Bernie Arai doing like a trio set.
Yeah.
And like just like losing my mind at how amazing it was. And being like, oh, it's my birthday. Happy birthday. Yeah. But yeah, now you only hear like, old guys like me and everyone older than me just talking about 1067 like it was this fever dream that we all had at the same time. And it kind of was. I just kind of wish there were, I mean, maybe Vincent Lim has some pictures. I know he's so important to the scene. He's so like
one of the most,
he's so
one of the most ever.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to have him episode 200.
Can't wait for 200. Yeah, maybe 150.
Maybe 150.
Yeah.
Maybe 125 even.
Yeah. Or anytime.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're
anytime.
listening, Vincent, just hit me up.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Vincent gets it, and because like if he didn't get it, that would be crazy. Like how often he's going to shows and taking pictures. Like I know he enjoys doing it, and it's like it's a way for him to pass the time, and it's a way for him to contribute to the scene. But it's like I think he also has to know the importance of what he's doing.
Of course,
like having a picture of these two musicians in the same room playing on the same stage together. I mean, like. I remember going to the jam session at Pat's. I told this story, obviously, on my episode with you.
Yeah.
The one where I played with John Gross.
John Gross.
And Brad Turner and Bob Murphy.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. When else did John Gross and Bob Murphy play
together? Yeah. And you wouldn't even know that of gig list wise because that's at a jam. So.
It was just a jam session, yeah. But I mean, what I'm saying is that like there are these moments. So I'm doing it right now. I'm documenting it right now. It's now on the podcast. It's now been immortalized, and
I was telling Steph that even back, we recorded probably summer 22, when you were a guest on the show when I was hosting it. Yeah. I already wanted you to host the show at that time. I just wasn't ready. I didn't have my ducks in a row. Yeah. It's like 50 episodes later, we finally got it. Yeah.
Yeah. What am I, 54? Episode 54?
I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's like, yeah, this guy could do it.
Yeah. I didn't tell you.
No. Well, I'm glad you I'm glad you got this thing off the ground. Got it ready for me.
Yeah.
No, that's very flattering.
Me too.
That's very
I think you're doing a fantastic job, so I'm stoked.
I'm doing what I can. Man.
I always tell you though, like this is in your first 5 or 10, so you know, if you look at my first 5 or 10, there's room to grow.
Yeah. We should do eventually we'll have like the subscriber only reaction podcast to the first podcast episodes.
I mean, they're out there. Anybody could listen to them at any time.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good. That'd be good if you Yeah,
But I didn't know anything about audio when I started doing it either. Like I just started doing it and I didn't know how you're supposed to do it. And it took me a good year to even figure out the basics.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that way. You were able to just tell me exactly what to do because I'm also a total I'm a complete airhead when it comes to any like technical stuff when it comes to audio. I'm even with guitar gear, I just turn the knobs until it sounds nice.
Yeah, I'm not in terms of playing, I'm not a gear person either. Like I have the same electric bass that I've owned for my whole career.
Yeah.
Like the very first one I bought is still the one that I play. The upright that I started on as a student, I still play that upright now, like when I did it at Frankie's earlier this month. And so I haven't really ever had a passion for gear. It's just kind of something I set it and forget it sort of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, if it works, it works. That's really all that matters. I get a little granular here and there when it comes to the actual instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to gear, audio stuff, like I've been using my Boss GT1 multi-effects pedal for the last 2 years now.
Yeah.
I think it does great. I just played a gig at Guilt & Co.
Oh, was it with Taras?
With Taras. Yeah. And we had a rehearsal. It's funny because like he saw me play at Fabrique and I was playing with who was it? I was playing with Idamar
Ares,
Idamar
pianist,
Ares.
guitarist.
And he was playing piano on that gig.
Yeah.
So he was on piano, I was on guitar. Dan Howard was on bass.
Yeah.
And I was playing my archtop guitar. I was playing a fully clean sound at Fabrique. And we were playing, some hard music and it was awesome, but I was, it was full jazz mode there, right? And Taras came and he watched and he was like, he's a very nice guy, obviously. And then, not long after that show, he asked if I could play with him at Guilt. And of course I obliged. And then we put a rehearsal together. It was me, him, Ronaldo Sands on bass.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Ronaldo?
Don't know him personally, no.
He's only been in town for 5 years. He got here right before the
okay.
pandemic. He's brilliant. Really, really good bass player. Really awesome, like just classic fretless electric bass sound. Really good. John on sax, John Nicholson on sax, and then Nick Bracewell on drums.
Yeah.
And we do this rehearsal. I bring my archtop, and Taras brought a bunch of this, just 80s jazz stuff. Like, we played a couple Pat Metheny tunes. We played a bunch of Chick Corea stuff. We played Spain. Like we did all that stuff. And then Taras is just like, don't you have like an electric guitar? And I was like, this is an electric guitar, man. It's like, it looks like an acoustic, but it's electric. He's like, no, you need to play electric guitar, electric. And I'm like, oh, like you mean like a solid, but like my Stratocaster? And he's like, yes. You need an electric guitar sound. And I'm like, okay. I thought, most people want me to play like the archtop, but yeah, cool. Like, and like he wanted me to play loud, like, because like everything he does is just like louder, more energy, higher energy. And so I brought the Strat and I brought the Boss GT1 and I set it to the King of Blues setting preset on it, which I guess is like an overdriven tube preamp kind of sound that breaks up and stuff, and apparently it was a big hit. So now I play electric guitar.
Real electric guitar.
The real thing. That was so funny. Did you ever play at the Libra Room? I think you did.
I played there with you once.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only time. Actually, I might play there with David Blake a couple of times too.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I was thinking about the Libra Room when you mentioned Bobby Weens.
Yes.
Because I played with Bobby Weens for the first time at the Libra Room.
Okay.
Because I think he's from Alberta, correct?
Yep.
And he knew he knew Jeff Gammon.
Yeah.
And so I needed a drummer for a last minute Libra Room gig, as they usually were last minute. At least for me they were. And Jeff recommended Bobby, and so Bobby showed up. And this was in my last year at CAP, and there was a period of time where I was just focused on practicing all the stuff that I was going to play for my grad recital.
Okay.
And I was just there was a period of time where I was only playing Inner Urge. Like anytime I had the opportunity to, I was just playing the Head to Inner Urge by Joe Henderson. And so we played at the Libra Room, and I called Inner Urge because I had, like, this is what I'm working on right now. And I we start playing it, and it's the Libra Room, obviously, and some fella stumbles over to me and just starts having a conversation with me while I'm playing.
Oh, fun.
The Head to Inner Urge. And I obliged, and I just have a conversation back with him while I'm playing the Head. It's like that head was so like just
automatic for you.
Yeah, it was so ingrained that like I actually didn't need to think about it. And he was saying something. He was just like, the bass is the most important instrument. I'm like, I agree. Yeah, you're right. He's just like talking about Jeff to me. He's like, the bass is the most important. And I said, yeah, no, totally, yeah. That's why I gotta get Jeff on these gigs, man. He's so great. And then I just remember like Bobby just staring at me like,
what are you doing?
What is happening? Yeah, Jeff's the best, man. Like, he looked at me like it was an alien.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I could do that now. I think it's just because like I was only playing that, like playing the Head to Inner Urge was like a bodily function at that time for me.
Oh man.
Yeah. And then another time, and like Bobby sounded great. I asked him to play a couple times in the Libra Room. And he one time he parked his car. So right outside the Libra Room, there was like a little bit of street parking right there on Commercial Drive. But there was one specific spot that was right outside the entrance to the Libra Room that was a taxi only spot. And if you park there,
you're gonna get towed.
Your car is gone. And that's what happened. So he showed up, and we would play at 9. So he showed up for 8:30, parked his car there. It's just like, wow, what a perfect parking spot. Right in front of the entrance. And he brought his gear and everything. He set up, and then we just started playing, and then we finished playing at 12. And then he goes out and checks his car's gone.
Oh no.
I think, I ended up going with him because he was going to give me a ride home. So I ended up going with him to Buster's Towing to pick up his car. And then we don't get his car till like 2 a.m. And then I think we took a cab there, and then he got his car back, and then like he gave me a ride home.
Oh boy.
Yeah. He was
welcome to Vancouver.
Yeah, he was a good sport about it actually. But yeah, there's always so many weird like parking things that happened around there too. There was another time that like Jeff's car got like stuck in a parking garage that had locked early, and a bunch of people's cars were like stuck in this parking garage. And the guy who owned the parking garage lived in like Port Moody, and then somebody ended up calling him, and he ended up coming. But then like somebody else had tried like breaking the lock with a hammer, but they only ended up like mangling it to the point where it couldn't be opened. So they must have. I don't know what ended up happening, because Jeff was just like, "Don't worry about it, man. Like, just take a cab home. We'll figure it out." And I think they must have needed to use like wire cutters or something to like to destroy the lock.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know what I'm talking about parking now.
Jeff was one of those guys too who always supported me even when I was down. Like he got me to sub for him at Long McQuaid when his touring. I was fortunate enough that I got to tell him all this stuff to his face when he came on the show, right? So that's all good. But he supported me a lot. He's one of those people who gave me stuff to do, like subbing for gigs or subbing for him at Long McQuaid North Van when he would have to go out and tour or something. So
Jeff's a sweetheart.
I appreciated that.
Jeff's a sweetheart. I think he'll be in town playing with Itamar, if I'm not mistaken, sometime soon.
Yeah.
He manages to make it down here quite a bit to play gigs still.
He's still very present here. Yeah. And he admitted to that when he came on. That he's still coming back regularly enough that he's showing up on the gig list as if he still lived here. So that's very cool. We're lucky to have him. Yeah. Then, like Bobby, I only knew for a little bit, and then it was Carson after that. But Carson is definitely like always so supportive and enabling of what I'm doing. Anytime I want to do anything, he's always down. It was really great. And year on year, like all the way back then when we were doing the stuff, and all the way till right now, he's still definitely one of my big collaborator friends, one of the most important ones for me too.
Carson's really good at letting you know what he thinks.
I like that. I like people like that.
Totally. Like you were right. You told me it was going to happen, but it's true. Like he always texts me after after an episode goes out and just tells me if it was good. And usually he just says it's good.
Yeah. Well, because it is.
Yeah. But it's nice. It's nice to get feedback.
Yeah. It's different now. Like, and it has been this way for a while now. Like, when I was doing the early Rhythm Changes days of meandering and just kind of writing into the void and having only a few, like those first 100 or first 200 people, I knew all those people, like those were my personal people, friends and family, colleagues, people I played with, the CAFU extended universe. So I knew those people. So I knew who I was writing to or talking to or whatever.
Yeah.
Now I really don't. I really have no idea. Like, I don't know the majority of the people on the Free Weekly list. The podcast, because it has a smaller audience, I do still feel like I can imagine who's listening, because it's very much within our scene. It's very tight. The podcast listenership is very tight. But in terms of like what I'm writing now or how when I'm putting together the Free Weekly, I cannot so much imagine a specific person I know as receiving it. I can imagine kind of a generalized person. Like I can't imagine who my target audience is, sort of, I can kind of imagine what demographics they are. And there's a couple of different demographics I can picture. But really now, the vast majority of the Rhythm Changes audience is total strangers to me. So I guess it's a little different.
Yeah. So as the audience gets larger, the way that you can describe the audience becomes more and more vague.
Yeah. And it won't go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That core of people, there will still be some of them who will stay tuned in over the years, but it'll be a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of the whole thing as you go on.
Interesting.
Yeah. Social media too, like as you accumulate more followers on social media or whatever, those aren't people because the people were already following you at the beginning. Yeah. Everybody you add is like a stranger or somebody you don't know as well yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It does reach that point where it goes outside of your personal group.
Yeah. I had a nice long incubation where it didn't feel like that happened. But I mean, it's happened now, so it is the way it is, and it's going to be that way. So it's a different way that I feel about it. It doesn't really change what I do, fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can tell like which people have reached that point, like in their followership. I feel like it's gotten to that point on my Instagram where it's like, okay, a good amount of the people who are following me are people that I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's more than half. But it's like enough where I feel like my posts, I don't know if I can be like Gordy about it. You know what I'm saying?
Unless you made a decision to. You were talking about how you compartmentalized your persona when you were talking with David and Carson.
Exactly.
About it. Unless you did that so that your persona was a different kind of voice or different kind of person. Unless you had made that decision, you're not going to go and change that now to make it like that. No, because you're already comfortable with it.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. I don't need to rebrand or anything. But it's it is funny how like I guess you do have to like stop shit posting at some point.
I mean, I never started really.
Yeah,
like I'm
yeah.
kind of. It's just
That's
never
true.
appealed
Yeah,
to me. I'm fine with it. Like whatever. I mean, sometimes I find people's stuff funny, sometimes I don't. But like for me, I don't care. I don't have any desire to do it. Social media, it's not something I spend that much time thinking about.
Yeah.
I have no idea how many people follow any of my social accounts. I don't care at all. All I care about is how many free weekly email readers there are.
Yeah,
because that one number controls everything.
Yeah.
If I grow that number, all the other things that I care about, like subscribers, money, sponsorship opportunities, everything else can be a function of that. So I just care about that number, and I don't care about any. I'll never celebrate hitting X social media followers. Doesn't matter to me one bit. All I care about is the free weekly list size.
Yeah, because that's like the main thing you're working on. Like this is just like a way of getting people in. And like I wrote about this on my blog with Instagram, where I'm old enough to remember when Instagram started. And I like downloaded Instagram like the moment it became available on Android.
Yeah.
I had Android
because it started as iOS,
Yeah. And back then, like it was kind of like Snapchat was available at the same time, and those platforms felt more playful and way more casual, and just like there wasn't as much of a there wasn't the idea of it being like business, like a platform for your business. That didn't compute back then, because like I wrote, like you're just posting a picture, like a horribly lit picture of like the worst meal you've ever seen, like just like some pan fried chickpeas that I made at home because it was cheap. And it's like this isn't like appealing content. Like this isn't something that anyone will actually want to see. It's literally just me documenting my life for my friends that are following me, because I have like 15 followers, because they're all my friends who also have Instagram. And then like of those 15 followers, like 5 or 10 of them will like it. Right? Just this horrible picture that I posted.
Yeah.
And like, so back then it was literally it was almost like having like a group chat.
Yeah.
Right. Like where it's really just like I'm just posting pictures of like whatever I'm doing. And since then it has mutated. It has mutated into this monster, especially since being purchased by Meta. Meta is only interested in, selling ads, more or less. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg said as much in his, congressional hearing.
Yeah.
Like we sell ads.
But this is where we have we came to it for different reasons then, because to be honest, like my use of it is totally cynical. I didn't have this. Yeah. What you're describing, I really appreciate it. And I have learned to hear that feeling, but like I never did that. I didn't care to use it that way. The only reason I am on social media is for my business purposes and to sell ads. Like that is what I'm there for. So I don't personally feel disappointed.
I've more or less come to I've come to accept it for what it is now. It's different. It's changed. And if I want to have that sort of experience that I had before, I'll have to find it in some other way.
Right.
Or maybe it'll just never happen again. And maybe I just lived through this sort of golden era of Instagram where it was sort of like fun and stupid. And now it's the same account that I've always had. I've changed the name a couple times, but it's the same account that I've always had. So you can go back into the archive of my Instagram posts and like find like those first pictures that I posted. And they're all stupid. Or like a selfie, like, I got new glasses and I just like post a selfie of my new glasses or something. And like, and now everything has to serve some sort of purpose on social media. And I think that's fine. I think that, like, honestly, that is how Instagram works now. And so you just may as well use it for what it works for.
Yeah.
At least in my case, like I already have the thing, and I already have some followers, and people look at what I post and hope to find something that is relevant to my career as a musician. So I may as well just use it for that. And I've tried starting a Finsta, and like it just doesn't feel the same. It's just like,
because you're trying to recreate something, or maybe you're not trying to, but like it is a reflection of what it used to be.
I'm
for
trying
you,
to be
and
21
it doesn't
years
match
old
anymore.
again,
Yeah,
and it's just
even if you're not trying. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it just kind of is. Yeah,
I'm not going to be 21 years old again. So that's probably also what it is. It's just, I'm just thinking about my youth. Not that I'm not young, but I'm not that young anymore. And so I think it's actually totally fine to compartmentalize that.
Yep.
Because if you're my age and you're experiencing this, you probably have some sort of like emotional connection to like how Instagram used to be, and you're like, oh well, this is how I would express my true self.
Okay,
by
yeah.
posting a picture of myself, and like, and of course, like that's I think there is actually like an important emotional thing about Instagram that people must have had, and I mean, like, maybe you can maintain that in some way, but for the most part, I mean, like, all Instagram really is doing is using your attention for as much as it can take.
Yeah.
And that's completely different from what Instagram was when it started. So you have to realize that it is actually effectively a different app. It is a different service than it was when it started.
Yeah.
And you may as well use it to help your career if that's something you can use Instagram for. And it's cynical, but also it is the truth. It is just like what Instagram is now. So I've had my grieving period for old Instagram already.
Gotcha.
And now it's all business. Now it's all graphic design, baby.
It has been, always has been.
Well, we're already at longest episode of the Chris Fraser
of your era.
Here.
All right.
So I mean, I did that for you the first time.
Yes. Yeah. Even though I messed it up. Yeah.
So wait. So there was a whole bunch of it that just didn't air, right?
Yeah, because I ran out of space.
We just kept talking.
Yeah, and so it stopped at a certain point. Yeah, and then I kind of cleaned it up and cut it off at the last cleaned up point and published it.
Recording the whole time. We have the whole thing.
That's how it's done.
Yeah. I think we have to start getting ready to go to this Thanksgiving dinner that we're having tonight, me and Steph.
Right on.
So thanks so much for coming and telling so much of your story that I actually didn't realize. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, thanks so much, Will.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to all your next episodes. This is fun.
Yeah, me too. Okay. Thank you as always for listening. I mentioned it in the episode, but if you don't already know, the best way to keep up with Will these days is to subscribe to the free weekly newsletter from rhythmchanges.ca. Actually, technically, the best way to keep up with him is to subscribe to the paid tier of his newsletter, but of course, that's completely optional. You do get more of his writing, though. For example, on Thursday night last week, he went to this new jazz venue, Apollo's, and stayed up till the wee hours of the night to bang out a story just to be released to his paid subscribers the very next day. Now, I don't know about you, but that's what I call bleeding edge reporting on the Vancouver jazz scene that you simply cannot get anywhere else. If that's not worth the price to subscribe, I simply don't know what is. Anyway, enough gushing. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.